Lawyer Nick Freeman, otherwise known as Mr. Loophole, who's been following this story right from the beginning, he has told this programme that he does not believe urinating or disposing of urine in the countryside or in a bush at the side of a dual carriageway constitutes litter, and therefore it is totally inappropriate for either Dacorum Borough Council or District Enforcement Limited on Dacorum Borough Council's behalf to be giving people fixed penalty notices for littering when in actual fact we're talking about urination. John is back on the JVS show, as indeed is Nick Freeman. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for coming back on.
Good morning, Jonathan.
Morning, Jonathan.
Morning. So just to bring us up to speed with where we're at, Nick, you advised John to put in another appeal, even though he had paid the fine because he was worried. You advised him to request that he wanted to put in another appeal.
Yeah.
He did that, and Dacorum Borough Council facilitated, even though the fine had been paid, they facilitated reopening the case and allowing John to put in that appeal. We've been waiting for the results of the appeal, John, and you have now heard from Dacorum Borough Council, well, actually from District Enforcement on their behalf. Just tell everybody what they have said to you.
Well, Jonathan, all I can do is read you the email that they sent me.
Yes, please.
And it was dated the 6th of February, and it says, "We acknowledge that you have made a late representation to District Enforcement regarding your fixed penalty notice. The representation has been considered and has been declined. The legislation relating to a littering offence state that a person is guilty of an offence if he throws down, drops or otherwise deposits any litter in any place to which this section applies and leaves it. The Council is satisfied that urination is covered by the Environmental Protection Act 1990. As this notice has been accepted and liability discharged by a payment, the matter is now concluded." And that was it.
So again, it would appear that Dacorum Borough Council and their representatives, in this case District Enforcement Limited, are insisting that as far as their legal advice is concerned, urination constitutes littering in this kind of environment. So Nick, you have disagreed with that legal viewpoint from the very beginning. Where do we go from here?
Well, it's problematic for John because he has accepted responsibility from the outset. Dacorum Council have given him, if you like, notice to appeal out of time. They've then marked their own homework and, unsurprisingly, come back to the conclusion that urine is littering. And therefore, his options are very limited. He can't appeal to the Magistrates' Court. He could, and I'm sure he's not going to want to do this, judicially review the decision, because that would be very expensive, complex, and I would urge him not to do that. What I would urge him to do is to make a complaint to the Ombudsman about the behaviour of Dacorum Council. In my view, that this is a dark day for Dacorum Council, because what they're doing is they're using legislation, the Environmental Protection Act, not for the purpose for which it was designed, and they're obtaining revenue from innocent people of good character for purposes which do not fall within its ambit. This isn't the case of somebody breaching the Public Order Act, where you're urinating in a public place, causing offence. That's when urinating is a criminal offence. There's no defacement here. Urine isn't litter. And what concerns me, Jonathan, is I understand that the advice that Dacorum Council has had confirms and corroborates what I say, that this is not the purpose of this legislation. So if I'm right in that, and I've heard that anecdotally, I haven't spoken directly to the legal advisor, but I've heard it anecdotally, that the advice that Dacorum Council have had, the legal advice, is consistent with my view. And I think any viewer will be of the same view. And while we're on that subject, you look at the spirit of the legislation, it's clearly not designed to criminalise every jogger, every bike rider, every dog walker who responds to the call of nature in a discreet way. So I think this is a really dark day for Dacorum Council, and I call upon the Chief Executive of Dacorum Council to come forward, come onto your radio show if you would have him, and explain what he's doing, because he's taking money from the taxpayer for purposes which, in my view, are illegal. And he's not fit to stand office. And all that can be done at the moment is for John to report the matter to the Ombudsman, let the Ombudsman investigate. But it would be fascinating, wouldn't it, to have the Chief Executive here? I'm sure he must be aware now, with all the publicity that's been attracted to this particular scenario, what's going on, what's he doing to stop it, why is he allowing it to continue? He cannot be fit for office if he simply acquiesces and allows this to continue.
I have contacted a barrister who many councils, and we don't have direct information to confirm that Dacorum Borough Council are one of those councils, but this barrister provides legal advice on this kind of issue. And I talked to him about John's case and indeed Michael's case previously.
Yep.
And his legal view is that there is a very big difference between somebody urinating in a public place, for example, in the middle of a town centre. If somebody urinates up against the front window of Boots in a town centre, then arguably that is defacement. Of course, there are other laws that would also come into play if somebody was doing that. But his argument was that you could make an argument that that is defacement of the local amenity and local environment, because you're in the middle of a town centre and you're leaving urine stains, urine smells in a public place. However, he also agreed with you, Nick, that there is a big difference between that and somebody urinating against a bush at the side of a dual carriageway, which is really not going to impact on anybody else. Now, if he is the barrister that is providing councils with legal advice on this particular issue, and he agrees that John and Michael and anybody else who's been fined in this way should not have been fined for doing this, then surely councils such as Dacorum Borough Council have got a big problem on their hands.
Well, they have, because they've been put on notice that what they're doing is illegal. I obviously haven't spoken to the barrister, but in terms of urinating in a public place, it falls within the ambit of the Public Order Act. It's completely different legislation, because we come back to the definition of litter. And, you know, the Environmental Protection Act is helpful, and apart from the obvious things, it explains things like cigar stubs and cigarette stubs. You know, it talks about the sort of stuff that one would associate litter to be, something that's tangible, that falls there, that needs to be picked up. You don't pick up urine. That's not possible. So my view is, one, it doesn't in these circumstances cause defacement, but more personally than that, it's not litter, and it can never be litter, and therefore it doesn't fall foul of this legislation. And you know, I just don't understand. I mean, one can only assume that Dacorum Council are just taking advantage of people who don't want the aggravation, don't want the stress, and are prepared to pay up and fill their coffers. Eventually, what will happen is somebody will decide, someone will go to this particular lay-by, they will urinate, they will get a fixed penalty, they won't pay it, they'll appeal it, they won't pay it, they'll then go to court and will then get a court ruling on it. And of course, I'm not advising any of your listeners to do that, Jonathan, but I'm sure that someone in the near future will take that view, will be obviously they'll be caught short by the call of nature, and they'll decide that this is an outrage, and they've got the wherewithal, the means, and the stomach for a little bit of a fight, and they'll take it all the way. And it'd be fascinating, wouldn't it, to see what a court of law says. Ultimately, it falls down to common sense. Urine is not litter. It doesn't cause defacement in these circumstances. And Dacorum Council is illegally obtaining money from the taxpayer.
Dacorum Borough Council have, since we started investigating this, and I sent you over a couple of weeks ago, Nick, a photo showing the new signs that have gone up now. These signs have gone up with Dacorum Borough Council logos on them, and they are at the side of the lay-by. It says, "Just stopping for a break," and then it shows a sign saying no littering, no urinating or defecating, and no fly tipping. CCTV used in this location. This lay-by is regularly patrolled. You could be issued a fixed penalty notice of up to £1,000. And then it talks about for inquiries, etc. Why do you think they've put this sign up there?
They've put the sign up to frighten people from committing any of those alleged offences. My comment in relation to that is that the sign is a further waste of taxpayers' money, because if the legislation doesn't support the act that's prohibited, the sign is a complete waste of time and money. It's just doesn't make the slightest difference. You can go along there, and in my view, you can urinate because it's not litter, and it doesn't matter what sign the council put. They have to have legislation. You don't go to court because there's a sign. You go to court because something is prohibited by legislation. That's what outlaws it. It's not the sign; it's the legislation behind the sign. And I did draw an analogy to you in my brief email, which I'm not going to repeat on the air, Jonathan.
But probably best.
Yes,
right. Okay. Best. So here's how things are going to proceed then, as far as I'm concerned. John, can you please put in a complaint to the Ombudsman? We can assist you in terms of doing that, and that is really just a complaint about the conduct of Dacorum Borough Council and their contractors on their behalf. I will reiterate.
And in that complaint, obviously make the initial point that you were discarding urine from a container and you received a fixed penalty for throwing out a cigarette stub.
Yes,
That needs to form part of the complaint.
Yes, quite. In the meantime, I will reiterate, Dacorum Borough Council know that we have a keen interest in speaking to anybody from the council who would like to appear on this programme and represent the council. So far, they haven't put anybody up, but I will reiterate the invitation and suggest that the Chief Executive maybe would like to take us up on that invitation. And in the meantime, Nick, I guess we will just wait and see. And there will, as you quite rightly say, there will be another case where somebody else is not prepared to pay. And that, of course, will then be crunch time for Dacorum Borough Council and District Enforcement Limited.
Well, I'd be delighted to be involved in that case, Jonathan, if it happens.
I had a sneaky feeling you would be. Thank you very much indeed, as always. Nick Freeman, the lawyer known as Mr. Loophole. Thank you to John. And Dacorum Borough Council, you can expect further communication from myself.